Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Elliot put his hand on her belly gently. Did the baby kick you today? Is she playing nice? Not bad. I'd be worried if she's too nice. Anastasia held his hand. Let's go. We're going to the hospital after we have dinner with Dad and Jared. Sure. Elliot kissed her forehead and led her into the living room. Frances heaved a sigh. Yep, I'm getting old. Even a 6-year-old kid is beating me. Anastasia heard everything, and she came in, smiling. Did you lose again, Dad? Yeah. Jared's really smart. I can't win no matter what I do, Frances admitted defeat. The boy encouraged his grandfather, Do your best, Grandpa. I'll get back to you after dinner. Frances smiled. The child started picking up the chess pieces and tucking them away. The child was young, but he was smart, and Frances felt grateful. Unlike other kids, he would clean up after himself instead of making a mess. It was 9 when they finished dinner. 4 black cars escorted Anastasia as she went to the Presgraves Personal Hospital. Everyone was prepared for Anastasia's labor. It was a merry day at Scarlet's house as well. 3 families were celebrating Christmas there. It was rowdy to say the least. Charlotte was looking at Ruka happily. She couldn't take her eyes off the girl ever since she showed up. Ruka was helping her mother and Scarlet make Christmas dinner. Harold, Walter, and Robert were enjoying their tea as they talked about current issues. Come, Ruka. Charlotte beckoned to Ruka when she was serving a dish. Ruka approached her shyly. Charlotte held her hand. She was just delighted to see the girl. Ruka was a likable lady to begin with, and her looks just checked every box Charlotte had on the list. Come, talk with me. We have a lot to talk about. Charlotte took Ruka away stubbornly. Ruka supported Charlotte, and they went into a quiet side chamber. After taking a seat, Charlotte said, If Ren tries to do anything stupid to you, you come to me. I'll whip him. Ruka chuckled. He might be a VP, but he's still a son at home. His mother will whip him into shape. It's all right, Charlotte. He's nice to me. Never said anything bad to me either, she said seriously. Good. But well, he's older, so I guess he knows how to love a lady. Charlotte defended her son. It would be frustrating if Ruka complained about his age. He loves me. She nodded. Charlotte remembered something. She left for the living room and came back holding a wooden box. Then, she opened it, revealing a jade bracelet in it. The bracelet was gleaming gorgeously under the light. This is a family heirloom that's been passed down for 2 centuries. It's invaluable, and now it's yours. She gently placed the box in Ruka's hand. Ruka was petrified. This is much too valuable. I can't take it. Charlotte. Don't say no. I got it appraised, and it's worth about this much. She raised a single finger. 10 million. It's worth 10 million. Not 10,000 or 100,000. Her heart skipped a beat. It's far too valuable for me to accept. I can't take this. She handed it back to Charlotte. You should. Keep it, Charlotte. You silly girl. What's ours is yours. If you won't take it, nobody will. She patted the girl's head happily. I'll make sure Ren marries you. I'm not going to accept any other woman as his wife. Ruka felt sheepish, but also moved. Thank you, Charlotte. Really. This means a lot. Charlotte handed the box over to her. This is gonna come in handy when you attend important events with Ron. Ruka nodded. Of course. I'll treasure it. She then noticed the light of a car's headlamps shining through the window, and delight filled her. Is that him? She saw a silhouette coming from the garden. Her heart thumped furiously and she said, I'll take my leave now, Charlotte. She left through the side door to welcome Ren. Ruka wasn't exactly being subtle, so Ren saw her as well. He smiled and stopped walking just for her. She leapt into his embrace and hugged him tight. It had only been 2 days since she saw him, but she was already missing him. Ron wrapped his arm around her shoulder and kissed her hair, then he looked at the living room for a moment before taking her into the bamboo forest. She followed him sheepishly. They had just gotten into the shadows, and he was already kissing her. He had missed her as well. The excitement kept Ruka tense. She let him kiss her, though her face was beet red. It's time for dinner. Let's go. Ron ran his fingers through her hair. His eyes glinted with desire under the lights, and he felt as if he was a beast trying to escape its cage. Ruka was too alluring. How many days has it been? He suddenly huddled closer. She answered shyly, 3. He patted the back of her head happily and pulled her closer. I just want to ravage her now. Eventually, dinner went underway, and Ruka was seated beside Ren for obvious reasons. Fortunately, Harold was so engrossed in his wine that he didn't realize Ren and Ruka's sweet interactions. Ruka didn't mind. Everyone else ignored the fact that Ren kept filling Ruka's plate with food and looking at her lovingly. They didn't want to pressure the new couple. The couple finished their food earlier than everyone and went out for a walk. The garden was chilly, but their intertwined hands felt warm. Scarlet was a nostalgic person, so she barely renovated anything from the first day the house was built. Aside from the new plants, everything else looked the same as they were 20 years ago. As Ren looked at the flowers, pond, and field, he was reminded of how cheeky Ruka used to be. He chuckled. She looked at him. Why are you laughing? I was just reminded of the time when you were a kid. You were really cheeky, he said. Ruka didn't remember things from way back then. Still, she smugly asked, really? Was I that cheeky? Yeah. Scarlet wouldn't discipline you. You were spoiled rotten. You'd take anything I have whenever you felt like it. Ren had to give everything nice to her back then. She said sheepishly, well, now I'm going to marry you, so we're even now? He pulled her into his embrace and smiled at her. Yep. She hugged him as well. He wasn't the only one who wanted to ravage her, she wanted to do the same to him as well. He was hot, and she was very much willing to sleep with him. She fluttered her eyelashes and asked timidly, can I stay at your place? Tonight? She nodded. Yes. He tightened his arms around her. I'm a bit busy the next couple of days, so I'll have to stay back in the office. But I promise I'll pick you up once I'm done with work, okay? He didn't want to refuse her, but work was heavy. It would be rude if he took her with him just to ignore her. After work was done, he would take a break to spend time with her. Ruka was an understanding person. Sure, I'll wait. He had just kissed her forehead when his phone rang. Ren picked it up and gave it a glance. I have to go. She pushed him. Go. Work's important. Ren smiled. She can't wait for me to leave? He turned around and was about to leave, but then Ruka said, a second. Ron turned back again to see Ruka sprinting toward him. She wrapped her arms around his neck and leaped up to peck his lips. She then took a step back and looked at him happily. Done. Go. The flames of desire lit up in his eyes. He pulled her into his embrace and whispered, I won't hold back the next time we meet. Ruka blushed as she knew what he was implying. She closed her eyes and nodded. I won't run away anymore either. He patted her head. Good. He left. She saw him off, but she didn't feel lonely. She knew he would miss her every minute he wasn't working. Night descended upon the city. An air of celebration permeated the air. Fireworks exploded in the sky, and booms rippled throughout the city. At Presgrave Hospital. Half an hour after they arrived at the hospital, Anastasia's water broke, and it was time for the operation. Since she went with a C-section the first time, Anastasia went with the same thing the second time. 10 months of pregnancy. 10 torturous months. It's finally time to unload. The girl was born on a nice night. She came to this world on the night of Christmas. 15 minutes after Anastasia was taken into the operating room, the baby came out crying. Her face was red, and she weighed 6.94 pounds. This was Elliot's daughter. Anastasia was still in the operating room. A nurse took the baby to Elliot after she was washed clean. Elliot looked at his daughter, tears of joy welling in his eyes. This was his second child. He missed his son's birth, making this moment all the more precious. The medical staff were taking care of Anastasia. Eventually the anesthetic wore off, and she woke up on the bed. Her wound still throbbed, but she was relieved to hear that her daughter was safely delivered. She would do anything for her. She was taken back to the ward. A nurse was wiping her sweat off with a towel gently while congratulating her. Anastasia decided to close her eyes and get some sleep. Vaguely, she felt someone kiss her forehead. Anastasia opened her eyes and was met with Elliot's face. "Good work, honey." "Who does she look like more?" Anastasia asked raspily. "You, of course." He held her hand. She still looked sleepy. He cooed, "Get some sleep. I'm not leaving." When Anastasia woke up again, she saw him crouched by her bed and staring at the bed beside her. To be precise, he was staring at the little one with the pink shirt under the white blanket. The baby had lustrous hair, and her face was the size of a fist. Her features were tiny, but she could see that the baby was beautiful. "She looks like you, doesn't she?" Elliot chuckled. The wound was still throbbing, but just looking at the baby filled Anastasia with joy. She actually wanted to get pregnant once more. Still, she was exhausted. "My job's done. You look after her. I'm getting some sleep." "Sure." Elliot looked at her gently. The baby's fists were closed. She was so delicate, he wouldn't even breathe loudly in case she was spooked. The nurse was in awe. "She's the young miss of the Presgraves, huh? I bet she'll grow up into a gorgeous lady. Her parents are beautiful, and so is her brother. The kids are gonna grow up to be drop-dead gorgeous." Silence had fallen upon the ward. Elliot was holding a sleeping baby in his arms. He just couldn't take his eyes off her. "She's my second child." It was 4 in the morning, so the sky was dark. 6 black cars were traveling through the street. A man in the back seat of one car was resting his eyes. His assistant, on the other hand, was going through the files despite how exhausted he was. The few international cases were forcing them to stay awake and making them feel tense. All of a sudden, a blanket of fog appeared out of nowhere, covering the whole street. The bodyguards slowed down in response. This fog was too thick to be a natural occurrence. Someone or something was waiting in the shadows for them. "We got a situation here." "Stay alert," the head bodyguard said. The car came to a sudden halt, waking the man in the back seat. He opened his eyes. The bodyguard was telling him what happened. This sudden fog was no ordinary phenomenon. The whole street was clear just now, and there shouldn't be any fog at night in this weather. Just then, a blinding flash of light assailed them. Something crashed into the car in front of them, and a great explosion happened. "It's a rocket launcher. Protect the VP!" Elijah shouted. The bodyguard got out of the car. Elijah and Ren followed a moment later. They were escorted away with the bodyguard shielding them. Less than 10 seconds after they were gone, a rocket launcher sent the car behind them flying up into the air. It fell back down and rolled a few times on the road. Right at the moment of explosion, one bodyguard came to Ren's rescue. He kept Ren underneath him and took the full force of the shockwave himself. The shockwave rippled through the street, and everyone felt blood rushing up their heads. Elijah knocked his forehead on something, and it drew blood. His ears were buzzing, but still he went and searched for Ron. "Sir." The bodyguard protecting Ren was hurt by the shockwave. He turned around, and Ron held the wobbling man. He told Elijah, "Come here and help me." Elijah couldn't hear a thing, but still he went and held the bodyguard up. The other men formed a semicircle in front of the three of them and retreated backward while protecting them. The fog was still too thick for them to see anything. The bodyguards had nothing but their hearing to help them discern where danger was coming from, and then silence fell. The fog was like a maze. The only thing visible was the burning car. The air was filled with the stench of ash. Just then, they heard the cries of a girl coming out of nowhere. She was running toward them, calling out to her father. "Daddy? Daddy, where are you?" It was a 3-year-old girl. She was frantically running on the street. Ren's heart went out for her. "There's a girl. Save her!" Elijah shouted. This could be a trap. The bodyguards pointed their guns at the girl. Ron ordered, "Do not hurt her." The bodyguards let go of the trigger. It was then the girl saw them, and she came right up to them. "Help me, mister. You gotta help me." One of the bodyguards darted ahead and held the girl. He checked up on her and shouted, "She's fine." "Bring her here," Ren ordered. The bodyguard brought the girl to Ren. Elijah tried to hold her, but the sight of his blood-stained face made her bawl even louder. Ron spread his arms. "Here, let me hold you." The girl finally let Ren hold him. His bodyguards were still looking around them. They knew this girl was nothing but a pawn of the enemy. This was not the time to let their guard down. Ren took the girl over from his bodyguard. He then saw a red mark flashing on her back. It was the mark that a sniper was aiming straight at her. "Look out! We got a sniper!" Ren roared. He swiveled around with the kid in his arms the next second. The red that was pointing at the girl was now aimed at his shoulder. Just a moment later, a bullet flew through the fog and pierced Ren's shoulder. He staggered forward due to the impact, but still he didn't let the child go. Elijah quickly came to him. "The VP's hit." It was at that exact moment, the bodyguards knew the girl was just an object for the enemy to pinpoint their location. They held up their shields right away and stood around Elijah and Ron. They could hear bullets flying through the air from all directions. Elijah wiped the blood off his face and took the child away forcibly. Ren wobbled a little, and he held Elijah's shoulder. "I'm fine." He was breathing heavily. "Reinforcements are on their way, but it'll take them 10 minutes. The fog was then blown away. They could hear the roar of a helicopter above them. The assassination ended in failure, but the killers were long gone. The street was filled with shards of car parts. The car was still burning even after almost 15 minutes, but if someone was still in there, they would have died of heat and suffocation. This assassination must have been a plan long in the making. The fog and that girl were just tools for the plan. A high-tech sensor had been stuck to the girl's back. Her function was to tell the enemy where Ren and his men were in the fog, then they would start firing. They knew Ren would never stand by and watch a child die in front of him. He would save her, of course, and that was the weakness they used against him. The night was still going on, and Ren's wound was still bleeding, drenching his suit in blood. Elijah and the bodyguards took him to the hospital right away. Ren was starting to get groggy on the way. The blood loss was robbing his consciousness. Right before he blacked out, he told Elijah, "Do not tell Ruka about this." Elijah watched as he was taken into the operating room. He was still worried, and he called Scarlet. What? Ren was ambushed? Scarlet and Walter rushed to the hospital right away. 6 of Ren's trusted men had gathered outside the operating room. They were all powerful officials and Ren's most powerful allies. Richard opened his eyes the moment he heard his phone vibrate. He picked up his mother's call, and once he heard what happened, he got out of bed quietly and swiftly made his way to the hospital. About 2 hours later, the doctors emerged from the operating room looking exhausted, but they smiled at the people waiting outside. The bullet was extracted. It didn't hit his vitals, but he needs to rest. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Scarlet was almost crying a moment ago. Now, she buried her head in her husband's arms and shed tears of relief. Her heart felt like it would burst from her chest. The ambush happened out of the blue. It was harrowing, so to speak. Elijah was told to work on the investigation. Everyone involved would be interrogated as well. Ren was pushed out of the operating room on a bed a while later. He just had dinner with us last night, and now he looks so pale. I hope he wakes up soon. Scarlet cried again. Scarlet didn't even tell their parents about it. This was too much of a shock for people their age. All she wanted was for Ren to wake up so she could tell everyone he was fine. Richard went straight to the ward and saw his mother on the couch. She was wiping her tears away. He approached the bed and looked at his uncle, then he turned around. What did the doctor say? He asked his father. Fortunately, the bullet hit his back, not his vitals. However, he lost too much blood on the way, so he's out for the count at the moment. Richard clenched his fists. Someone attacked Uncle Ren? I'll make them pay for this. He sat down beside his mother and wrapped his arm around her shoulder. He assured, Uncle Ren's gonna be okay. You have to look into this, Richard. I don't want any of us to get hurt. The election's getting near, so his enemies are trying to take him out. He ran into the same thing last time, but he was lucky and the incident didn't threaten his life.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.